you don't want to agree to something in a contract that says the brand has perpetual use of your name and likeness, because what that's doing is that's opening up the door to potentially even hundreds of thousands of dollars in paid partnership deliverables that you did not agree to. Hi, everybody. I'm Amy Gorin, and I'm your host for the Master the Media podcast. Welcome to episode 6, where we're going to talk about the gut check test that you should be doing whenever you're deciding whether to work with a brand or not. Before we dive into that, I want to announce that this week, so on Wednesday and Thursday at 1 p.m. Eastern Time, 10 a.m. Pacific Time, we are hosting free masterclasses. The June 11th masterclass is for dietitians and healthcare professionals, and the June 12th masterclass is for physicians and advanced care practitioners on how to land $50,000 in brand partnerships in 6 months. And you can grab your free spot by going to masterthemedia.co/masterclass. If you're watching this or listening to this episode after June 11th or 12th, no worries, just go to that same link and you'll be able to catch the replay. So what I want to talk about today is how to decide whether you're going to work with a brand or not. I think it's I know it's a common misconception that any brand partnership that comes your way is something that you're going to want to say yes to. And that's something that I actually get a lot of questions about is, like, hey, Amy, I want to work with brands, but it seems kind of shady and unethical because I don't really actually like all of these brands that come to me. And the good news, and I wouldn't have it any other way, is you absolutely should not be working with brands that you don't align with. And so we're going to talk about what that means. Before I dive into that, I just want to share, I myself have turned down hundreds of thousands of dollars in brand partnerships that I do not want to take on. And there can be various reasons. There can be a brand partnership that is not ideal for me specifically, but is perfect for you, or vice versa. And so some examples of partnerships that just are ones I've turned down is I don't work with any products that contain sugar alcohols. So, like erythritol, for example. These are products, sugar alcohols, there's a lot of reasons that people love them. There's many reasons people might dislike them. I myself can't tolerate them. So I eat products with them and it gives me stomach issues. So I wouldn't be able to, in good consciousness, endorse a product that contains sugar alcohols. They're also not something that, I buy for my husband to eat because it hurts his stomach too. It's not something I would recommend to friends and family for these same reasons. Another reason that you could turn down, that you might end up turning down a brand partnership, is that you have a conflict. And this is something that often happens, whether you, let's say that you're working with a probiotic company and you have official exclusivity where in your contract it says that you cannot work in a paid capacity with any competitor probiotic companies within, the next 6 months. And so by default, if a probiotic company comes to you and wants to work together today, you cannot. You can, however, say, let's pick this conversation back up in a few months, and be just transparent about the fact that you're working with X company, and that you might be able to work with them in the future. You wouldn't want to go literally from working, say, in June with probiotic company X to in July working with probiotic company B. There always should be a little bit of breathing room, a couple of months in between, if you're going from one brand to another, so that it doesn't look like you're just bouncing around from brand to brand and whoever will pay you the most. That's not the message that you want to get out there. Now, sometimes you're going to have a situation where a brand is not paying you for exclusivity. And exclusivity, just so you know, it's one of my favorite things to get paid for, because a brand will literally pay you to not work with competitors. And so essentially you're getting paid to not do work. And this can be anywhere from, low for this would be like $600 or $700 a month. Normal would be about $1,000 a month. For a highly competitive category like supplements, it can even be as high as $1,500 a month. And this is usually for a narrow category of exclusivity. So if you're like, okay, I'm not going to, you're getting paid to not work with other probiotic companies. That might be $1,000 a month versus if you're getting paid to not work with all other supplement companies, that's a lot of potential work you're turning down. So that might be $1,500 a month. However, sometimes there are situations where you're not technically getting paid for this, but it's best practice to not work with two similar brands at the same time unless you have a conversation with both of those brands about their comfort level. And so I've had a lot of situations where I've turned down work because, maybe I'm working with a snack bar company and another snack bar company wants to work with me for very similar work. And it just doesn't feel right to be doing, media interviews for both really similar brands at the same time. Sometimes there's, and that's something where you can turn down the work. You can even tell your current partner that you were offered this, you turned it down, and that will honestly give them a greater respect for you, that you're just valuing that relationship so greatly that you're really, really focusing on the work that you're doing with them and you're prioritizing them as a brand. There are instances where you can work with two similar companies at once. For me, one example was I was working with two probiotic companies at the same time. Probiotic company A, we were doing social media, a healthcare professional webinar, and the other company I was doing more behind the scenes consulting. And the types of work were so different that, I told both brands what I was doing, but they were comfortable with it because it wasn't like I was doing, an event for each of those brands, or I wasn't doing back-to-back social media posts for both of those brands. So when you're deciding whether or not to say yes to a brand partnership, I am a huge believer in your instincts being the greatest guide that you will ever have of what you should and should not take on. So I like to talk about doing a gut check test when a potential brand partnership comes your way. And what this means is asking yourself a few questions. So, first of all, you will want to try the product if you haven't before. So do you like how it tastes? Do you like the texture of it? Do you like how it makes you feel? Is it something, if you pass that, is it something that you would recommend to your clients, to your family, to your friends? Would you buy it for yourself? Would you buy it for your own family? And then we'll talk about these in detail. Then from there, do you align with the messaging that the brand wants to relay about their product? It could be an apple that you're considering working with, an apple company, like say a different, a new kind of apple. But if they want you to say this apple cures cancer, well, there's no research to back that up. And so that wouldn't be a comfort level. And then from there, there's other factors like, do they seem ethical, that they would, want you to disclose properly to consumers? Are there any other red flags to be aware of? So let's talk these things through in more detail. So for trying the product, you will always, there's never an instance where you are not going to want to try the product before deciding to work with them in an official capacity. So if you haven't tried their product, if you're not familiar with it, always ask, can you send me some samples so I can try this to make sure it's a good fit? That's like step number one that just you got to do. The next thing is, trying it yourself. And there's a few exceptions to this. So for me personally, I follow a gluten-free diet. I'm not able to tolerate foods containing gluten. And I have still worked with Dave's Killer Bread, for example, because they're a product that when I could eat gluten, I loved. I buy the product for my husband. I recommend it to family and friends. I would eat it if I could. And I feel very strongly that it's a great product. So it makes sense to even still recommend it, even though I can't personally eat it myself. However, it wouldn't make sense to partner with them to create recipes because I can't even touch the bread myself. But it would make sense to partner with them for media interviews of products that I recommend, or if they want to sponsor an event that I'm running, but from there, I've, for instance, turned down working with Halo Top ice cream because they contain sugar alcohols. I've eaten their product. It tastes good, but I just personally don't feel well after I eat it. So it doesn't make sense for me to recommend that exact product. So that's something you'll want to, play around with. If the product itself is a straight up snack food, like just, try it. If it's an ingredient, if it's like a flour or a sugar substitute, play around with creating recipes, get used to how it acts, what you'd be able to say about it and feel good about saying about it, as a replacement for X, Y, or Z. And then here's where you've tried the product, you say you've determined, I like this product, I like how it makes me feel, I like its ingredients, I would recommend it to other people. Here's where you'd want to get, on a phone call or a Zoom call with the brand to talk through, what kind of work are they interested in having you do for them? And what are the messaging points that they would want you to communicate? And so here's where you can see whether you'd align on those. It could be, the product could be amazing, but they might want you to say something that you just don't feel comfortable saying about the product. Say it's, there's been actually a lot of products. So right now, I'm pregnant, and I can't take random supplements that brands send me because I have my very rigid supplement routine, prenatal supplement routine, and I can't necessarily try those products myself. And so if a brand wants me to say, I take this product every day, well, that would be lying. But I could say, I recommend this product to my family and friends and clients because I really think highly of the ingredients. So that's something you'd want to talk through. Like, what does the brand want you to say about the product? What research do they want you to talk or not talk about? Are those messaging points that they want you to talk about, that say this product contains, a good amount of fiber, and our clinical studies have shown that this fiber helps with, preventing heart disease. Is that something that's actually truly scientifically backed up? Can you take a look at that study to make sure that it was done in an ethical way? It's peer reviewed, N number, the number of people in the study group was, high enough. It wasn't like 5 people. Do you feel comfortable with those things? Also, if it is a supplement or, something along those lines, ask about, has this product been third-party tested and verified? So what that means is the company itself can say, okay, it contains X amount of X nutrients. It's not contaminated and it's safe to take. Have they run that through a third party? So examples of that would be, an example would be NSF, which is a third-party testing organization for supplements. So you just want to make sure that you feel comfortable saying whatever the brand would want you to say. Or like maybe you end up kind of telling them, well, that's something that I wouldn't feel comfortable saying, but I could say X. And you want to see how they react to your feedback, because this is going to be a relationship where you want both sides to feel comfortable. And part of your job as a brand partner is to provide feedback because you are the healthcare expert. And so sometimes you're going to have a viewpoint that they hadn't considered, and you want to feel comfortable bringing it to them. So this also kind of tests out your comfort level with doing all of that. So those are the main things that you want to consider when you're deciding whether or not to work with a brand. When you say you had that call with the brand, you align on, okay, love this product, love what, the messaging points are, love the work that they want me to be doing. We're going to be doing some fun blog posts. I'm going to help them host an event. I'm going to send some newsletter blasts out to my audience. From there, you're going to want to have a contract that's signed by both you and the brand, or the agency that represents the brand. And you're going to want to have that signed by both parties before you start working together. And this is like your last kind of checkpoint to make sure that you align, that everything passes your gut check test, that there's no red flags. And so some examples of red flags that I've seen in contracts, and I have walked away at the contract point. And again, we're talking like I walked away from literally a $60,000 contract before because there were things in the contract that I could not agree with. And so sometimes those things are really, really red flaggy. Like, I like to put a clause in my contract about if I'm doing anything consumer facing, like I'm doing media interviews for the brand or I'm going on TV to talk about the brand, that I'm disclosing that I'm a paid partner, a paid spokesperson with the brand. I've sometimes had brands ask to take that clause out. That's a huge red flag. These are actual FTC regulations that you have to disclose legally if you are a paid partner with a brand. And so if the brand's asking you essentially to break the law, that is not a good partnership to be in. So that's something that you want to keep an eye out. Sometimes a brand will throw things into the contract that you didn't discuss. This isn't always malicious. Sometimes it might literally be you talk to person A, person B made the contract, they gave person A the standard contract to pass back along to you, and it contains things that you didn't discuss, like perpetual use of your name and likeness, which is your name, image, biography in relationship to the product. So that's something where you want a set point in time. They have the brand and a very set term of use. So, for instance, if you're authoring some content for a brand's website, you'd want it to say in your contract that the brand can use your name and likeness in a byline capacity on that article for a period of, let's just say, 3 months. And after that, your name is taken down. You don't want to agree to something in a contract that says the brand has perpetual use of your name and likeness for that blog post and any and all other uses for paid advertising too, because what that's doing is that's opening up the door to potentially even hundreds of thousands of dollars in paid partnership deliverables that you did not agree to. So they could take a quote from you in that blog post and use it in advertising on Facebook and on Google. They could do so many different types of things. And what's going to happen is in 6 months or a year or 2 years, when a competitor brand comes to you and says, hey, we want to work with you, but we see that you're working with this other brand, what's up with that? You won't have any legal right to ask the brand to take that down because you signed away those perpetual rights. So that's something where when you get to the contract stage, you can hire a contract attorney to look it over to make sure there's no red flags. You can, in Master the Media, we actually have a contract template that we give you that was created by our own legal attorney instructor. And you can take that and say to the brand, can we use this as a template? That way you're not marking up their version, you're starting with your own version that's like says exactly what you want it to say. The more you do this, the more comfortable you do get with that language. But anyway, so we talked about red flags and brand partnerships. If you have a red flag for you personally, that is time to walk away. And you can do it very eloquently. You don't have to ruffle feathers. You can just say, thank you so much for this opportunity. I've thought about it, and this partnership just doesn't align with what I'm currently available for, or I don't have the current capacity to take on this partnership. Most times they're not going to ask you for details on why. If they do ask you for details, I've been honest about the fact that, I really like what you're doing, but I just can't put my name behind these ingredients at this time. I might, this is something I'm willing to give consideration to, and I might change my standpoint in the future. But this is where I stand right now. So you can always leave things open to the potential for future other work. Also, a lot of times the people who are approaching you to work together say they work for an agency that represents 20 different brands. And so if they respect the way that you communicated about turning down that partnership and you ask them to keep you in mind for other potential work, it might work out great. They might just bring a different brand to you that is actually the right fit. And so that's a lot of times what does happen. So I don't want anyone to feel upset at having to turn down work, because it happens to, if you're a healthcare professional wanting to work with brands, it's going to happen. Like I said, I've turned down hundreds of thousands of dollars in partnership opportunities, and it's never hurt my business. I've never regretted it. If anything, brands will respect the fact that you are sticking to your own ethical guidelines, that you're transparent, and that will make them want to work with you even more.